Well, good morning. Here we are, Monday morning. Well, it is where I am. It is where you are too. So for some people it might not be, but it is here. So here we go, Monday morning with our first love note of the week. Well, welcome Annie Poole. And yeah, these are something that we're just offering as a service for you. Here we are, Monday morning with our first I'm getting feedback on mine, but that we're offering for you to be our speakers for Viva Goes Virtual, which is happening, remind me, so it's the 23rd to the 26th of October. That's right. Yeah. Well, Annie knows better than we do, see. It's Monday morning. I'm kind of, so Monday morning, clicked back into the world of work. So yeah, here we are. So Annie Poole's very graciously accepted our invitation, and she is going to talk to us. I'm fascinated. I'm very curious about the title that she's chosen, which is Sacred Life. So we're going to be looking at that through the eyes of the three principles. I don't know if you have anything you want to add, Sue, before.
No, that's just to welcome Annie, and it's been a long time since we've had a chat, and now we're not going to chat, we're going to listen. So
okay, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world, just welcome. And I chose this topic because the world is very topsy-turvy at the moment, and politics and education, and there's kind of a power paradox, isn't there? And in education in particular, that's the area I know, it feels like a square peg in a round hole. And so my vision for life is wild success of what can be possible. That's what I take into school, into leadership. And I feel the sacredness of life, the way we value life, which we've slowed down to do in the pandemic, that kind of isn't there in the media. It's not there in the news. It's the economy, it's the drive, it's that masculine energy of the leaders that we have at the moment. And that feminine life-giving nurture is missing. So how do we bring that back? Well, we know there's a call at the moment, a call for us to be visible. Here I am. I've avoided Facebook, I'm Zoom and everything. I'm here. It's a call. We're all being called at the moment out of that illusion of that power, more to that sacredness. Sue was just talking about visiting nature, because that's where the harmony and the balance and the sacredness is all the time. Whether there's a fire or a flood or a storm, it restores itself. And that's what the principles is about, isn't it? That restoration of who we truly are, that sense of truth and belief and faith that we sometimes lose in the tiredness of life or the mundane life, or if we're trying to stay limited and small. And so understanding the illusory nature of life, how do we do that? And in Sid's book, The Missing Link, which I read a lot, Sid says, in the silence beyond all things lies the divine knowledge that will help guide you through life. So if I go into school, I don't go with a curriculum. I go with this understanding, and I have a conversation with a leader or a teacher. The kids have already got it. They really have. And if I'm talking to children, I'll talk to them as if they have got it. But Sid says, look within your own consciousness. And that's what I mean by sacred life. It's that conscious awareness. For here lies the answer to all of humanity's problems. So looking within, finding who you truly are. If anybody says to me, Annie, what do we do if we want to go into school? I'll say, you must be ready first. It isn't a case of education's broken, let's go and fix it. The teachers don't know anything. The leaders don't know anything. It's a case of looking at life, looking at your own life to start with. And if you are in that essence of who you really are, and even if you're not, that's where the wild success comes in. You know, if you get lost down the road and you feel like we have done in this pandemic, you know, we feel isolated. That's one of the key things that comes up in education. Isolation, lack and shame are those key things that come up constantly. And they're just names for that disharmony within us. But if you're going in to have a conversation, don't go in with that sense of you have a piece of information to impart. Go in with a sense of finding out, of discovery, and that conversation of who that person or those children really are, or that teacher. And if you go in from that space of love, from who you truly are, then your wisdom will turn up in that moment. And that's the piece I really love. But the world seems a little bit uncomfortable at the moment. We were just talking about that, Sue, weren't we? And I love this piece in The Island of Knowledge. You say they pushed each other, shouted at each other, and verbally and physically fought. They condemn each other's actions, then usually end up pretending to themselves that no matter what anybody did in the group, it was okay. And everyone forgave everyone else. If everyone is so forgiving, where did the hostility in the group come from? I'm absolutely sure if you really looked at this question, the answer would be yourself. I'm pointing to that. That could be playgrounds, couldn't it, where children fall out? It can be in an office. It can be at the supermarket. The lady in the supermarket was telling me last week how much hostility she receives, by people who don't follow the COVID rules. And it's so that while success is about that being available to what is, being available to, okay, finding this place, in this place of being stuck in a pandemic or stuck in a queue in the supermarket, how am I showing up? How, the lightest the footprint we can leave on this earth, the lightest footprint, if we can walk in the beauty way, in the way of being the best we can, and some of the best me isn't always what's showing up on Zoom. You've only just got to ask my kids about that. Some of the best me is doing the best I can in the moment. Taking the information in, and if I have that reaction of, that gut reaction of, ooh, I really don't like that, then stepping back from that for a moment. Because we know if we don't step back from it, like in the quote that came from Sid, if we don't know that the disharmony is coming from in us and we're looking to blame and to judge somebody else, then we'll stay in that stuck place. And that would be the first area I would look at with children, that judgment. And the first thing I do in Simply Being Me, which is a school program I use my book, Simply Being You, for the grown-ups. I use the Simply Being Me with the children. The first thing we look at is, who am I? What's and all, who am I when I fall out with my friends? Who am I when I'm doing my best work? Who am I when I feel I'm not good enough? Who am I when I say I can't do it? And it's about exploring this experience in a sacred way, not in the way that's valued out there in the world. Money, the economy. And for me now, this calling is to share my gifts in a gentle way that means I have to be visible and show up. And before, when I shared them, and I've shared them with hundreds and thousands of schools and children, I did so in a tiptoe way. But now this calling is for me to be absolutely there, warts and all. So that's why it's a sacred life. It's as sacred as a tree or nature. It's a gift that we've been given and something that we're stewards of on this earth. And it's so great to see Judy and Linda on Facebook and Amy talking about the principles in action in the life that we've got now. We're struggling with the politicians, we're struggling with the way the economy is driving things and metrics in schools, and the uniqueness of life, the uniqueness of who we are as human beings is valued in school, but that's not talked about in the media. And so for me, I'm never going in to fix anything. I'm going in to see what gifts we can share, because I never go into school, as you probably know, Sue, without coming away with so many gifts. And it's the same in coaching, Sheila, isn't it? You know, it's a two-way thing.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So it never, well, I was going to say it doesn't fail to surprise me, but it's so gratifying that, yeah, when you go in and you're in service to somebody, a group or people or a person, that, yeah, that there's so much there for me, just to speak from personal experience. Yeah, over and over and over again.
And that service, one of the things I've discovered recently was Kim Cassay, who I did Supercoach Academy with, talked about coaching and a business coaching model in service, but also valuing yourself, where you know, you're not giving it away for free. Because in education, I'm asked so often to work for free, and actually, you know, there is a part, there's a realistic part. We are in this human body, and it's about that harmony of knowing the truth, that spiritual realization that Sid talks about, knowing that truth that whilst I'm in service, it's also about me valuing who I am. Not in the way that some leaders might in the world, where, you know, it's take all the money and have it yourself. But it's in that sharing gifts. It's finding that balance again in the business world of being paid for what you actually do. And that's something that I think this sacred life is spiritual, but it's spiritual in form. And that's the piece that we need to keep pointing toward or seeing. You know, how does that oneness, how am I the universe? How am I that universal mind in this Anni body? How does that play out for me? And a lot of the time, I don't know. And it's being comfortable with that unknown. I think that's one of the areas that's when you work with the intellect in education and your busy mind is full, there's no space. And so the simple message of SIDS meets a lot of cynicism in education. But if you're steadfast in your no, because it's the truth, if you're talking about truth and you're steadfast, then people hear it in the way they're meant to hear it. And I've faced conferences of 300 heads, and some of them have been cynical, and yet at the end of the talk you can hear a pin drop. That's not to do with me, that's to do with universal mind. So we've got to show up and be a conduit. We are a conduit for universe. We are universal mind. It's whether we see that or not.
I love the thought that we can, or people who are in their spheres are introducing this language that we can use quite freely and confidently, as opposed to, well, that's a little, you know, that's got to be kept in a box over there, and now and again we have a lesson that's called that, and then we are allowed to get it out, as opposed to, no, this is the truth of as much as we can see. And the idea that we can talk about sacred life to anybody, anytime, anywhere, just that's taking the lid off almost. And
it's exactly what you said, Sue. It's, you know, what's sacred is a photograph of a baby or your dog, and that's sacred, isn't it? It's so special. It's beyond words. Or the sacredness of a dandelion clock, or the butterflies that we're seeing since the pandemic. You know, I was talking to Sue Anderson. We're doing Sacred Life, the Quest for Zest for Women. And we got stuck in how it should be. It was so funny. It just sort of fell in. And we were making it more about the form of the way we would do it, because not everybody's comfortable with the word sacred. And actually, I used to say to the kids at school, if they were upset especially, let's get our sacred space out. Let's put that rainbow around us. You know, and even the great big Year 6 lads, and I might say to a teenager, you can imagine a bubble around you. That's your bubble. That's your space. And we were sort of stuck about the form of this, and then suddenly over the study where I am came a flock of geese, and I just went, oh, hang on, Sue. And I jumped up through the window open so I could hear them. And we were just laughing, and I thought, thank you. That was such a sign of don't look in the direction of being stuck. Be open to wild success, as wild as the geese.
You just sparked a memory. When I worked with the disaffected youngsters that had been thrown out of mainstream, I remember you talk about big year sixes, I talk about big year 11 boys, you know, like they're just all over the place. The chair's too small, the table, you know, but seeing 3 or 4 of them knitting,
Wow.
and you could hear a pin drop, and they had got to the point where that was okay, and there was no need to say anything, because it was all in that feeling. And you know, for me, I just realizing even more now, because in the moment it just felt extraordinary, not in that kind of, oh, what a curious thing. It just felt so right that we'd found this together, this space, and how they'd fallen into it, and we fell into it together. And it was never about knitting, but the knitting was kind of an entry point almost to something very different and very special. And just they're the moments, aren't they? They just dominate.
I usually take, when I'm doing children, I usually take a box in, and I have in the box, I have a mirror at the bottom, which they eventually see themselves in. And I have a dragon egg, which is not here at the moment. And I don't tell them what's in the box, but we kind of build up this story around the box, and they all add bits to it of what could be in the box. And of course, the box is a symbol of how we make story up about our lives. And then we take the lid off, and they see this beautiful dragon egg, which is all sequins. And I tell the story that the little person inside the egg doesn't want to come out because it's comfortable, it's warm, it's dark, and it's scared about the outside. And actually, I did a children's podcast in the pandemic with my granddaughter, and she was the dragon. And so we build up this little story about reluctance. And I think on YouTube it's called The Reluctant Egg, that the children made out of, cartoony bits, and they put it together. And it's about, where do we limit ourselves? Or, the little dragon inside the egg was blaming everybody in class. I was the dragon's voice, and it was blaming everybody. Well, if you didn't sit there, I'd be able to come out. And so we're exploring how we judge and blame, and I love the way you can use the metaphor of story, however old the child is, that metaphor of, you can talk it through sport or anything. My grandson is coming up 15, and his sense of humor is amazing. And yet he probably doesn't show that in school. And so my post-pandemic, my kind of well-being is pointing to school to say, find out, take the lid off the box, what's in there? Don't just fill it. You can have a bag or a box and you can fill it, and there's no room for anything else. And it's about, if the message from the government is, well, we'll have to test them now to see how much they've missed. So I've tried so hard to work with politicians, but I'm not being guided in that direction. So I keep trying to come away from education, because it's 43, 44 years now. And I think I'll just do something else. And then the universe says, no, come back in a different way.
I'm glad you're there. I'm glad you're there. Anyone listening, I can't imagine they wouldn't be glad to hear this refreshing. We just lost Ken Robinson. Just one of the greatest speakers about education I've ever heard. And there's the spark coming through what you're saying. I think it's beautiful.
His book, The Element, is something that I dip in and out of when I'm doing leadership coaching, because it does point to the wild success of life. It does point there. And if we're going to test children, and we're not going to do art or music or anything else, that's the square peg in the round hole. That's it for children, that's it for grown-ups. So this calling, this sacred life calling, is kind of not focusing on the illusion of the testing and the metrics. It's focusing on what can we do to really point out that sacredness and still do the testing.
It's so, I mean, what you're pointing to, Annie, is so needed. I feel like I'm on a bit of a, I don't know, beating a drum at the moment about, you know, so many people are talking about unemployment. Most people are talking, oh, it's going to be terrible, isn't it? Isn't it terrible? Isn't it awful? There's so much unemployment. What are going to people to do? I feel so sorry for the youngsters. What are they going to do? And as that, okay, there's truth to that. You know, that's what it looks like, and I can see, and I absolutely empathise with that. And my sort of the beat in the drum is, well, I don't think it's ever going to go back to how it has been. I just can't see that we can, you know, revert back to how it was. So what needs to happen is people need to start understanding that, accepting that, realising that, and looking for a new way forward versus ain't it awful. And for me, in the world of business, and for young people, you know, I've got young daughters who are in business for themselves, but they're the minority. You know, I really feel that we're moving in the direction of self-employment. People have got to start looking to their own creativity and not waiting to be told what to do and how to do it. And this comes to school, doesn't it? It's like the system's so antiquated. We're not taught how to think for ourselves. And you're saying if we're going to lose art and music, there's the creativity that we know out the window. It's like, what's going to happen? And we're just going to keep being boxed in and boxed in and boxed in. You know, your metaphor of the box, it's literally that, isn't it? We're being boxed in.
And yet there's a lid on the box, isn't there? So if we don't put the lid on, however we boxed it in, there's always another view out, isn't there? I think that the power paradox is the way that industry and civilizations is way back to the Industrial Revolution and before, when they built pyramids, and it was logical, and you did it this way, and the outcome was something materialistic. Whereas those spiritual values, you know, those that are played out in religion, all the religions of the world, or they're played out through you know, Mother Teresa or whatever, those are not valued, and that's where the call's coming from. Our youth, my grandson and even my granddaughter at age 10, see life differently, and it's about us letting go of the way we see life. You're so right, Sheila, and pointing with our wisdom and experience, sharing the gifts of what we know, so that they're emerging with that brand new way of being, with that sacredness of the wisdom of what we've gained. And so we're kind of like the midwives of this generation coming forward, and that's the huge piece. And it was cooking all through the pandemic. I thought, what's missing? And I've always thought, what's missing in education? And the little voice said, you're looking in the wrong direction. There isn't anything missing. It's a bit like a cycle or a season. If you think the tree's dead or there's something missing, and you see the tree in winter, the possibility is, if you sat beside that tree, because I've got a maple outside the window, that's why I'm using that metaphor, you will see the beauty of it bursting into life in spring, and it won't be the same as last year. That tree will be different. And that's it, isn't it? Being open to that.
I love the idea of the midwife. I was listening to a book this morning, just briefly, called Warmth of Other Suns, about the great migration from the south to the north of America after emancipation, so-called emancipation. And that very expression was used by the people who got there first. The character in the story is acting as a midwife for people who come after him, as opposed to an oppressor, because he's got there first and now he knows what he's doing. You don't want any competition. And it's beautiful, I think. And for the younger people, it's not like saying, you've got to save us. And it's not saying, do it our way. You know, we've got years of experience. It's saying, how can we help you?
It's saying,
your vision.
Come and walk along the beach with me. come and do the knitting with me. You know what we know from people that have touched our lives, there are usually moments where there was a connection first, and then whatever was needed because you were connected, that wisdom comes into the moment. And often I hear people that are going into school and they feel they need to take a huge curriculum. And I get that, because that's kind of like, that's what's portrayed in the media, that you need a curriculum, but you actually don't. You really don't need a curriculum. You might need an idea of what you want to share, what your gift is, but you can only do that if you really learn about yourself. A curriculum is for me, is the last thing that a school needs. But I understand that's the Annie feeling, you know, because I'm in school so much. But I understand, because now that I can't go into school, I'm having to put my things in form. And I'm having a real struggle with that, you know, that my thinking is having a struggle with that. How do I, you know, I don't want to put it into form, because if I do, people think that it's this way. You know, this is the way you have to do it. And so I've been working on that for the last 3 months, and Bill Pettit wants me to come and share it, and I keep having to get up and walk out into the garden in my bare feet and think, come on, what is it? Let go, surrender. Haven't quite got there yet.
Wow, feels very much like the direction is showing up for you.
All we can do, though, Annie, is point, right? That's all we can do. I heard somebody talking about that the other day, you know, and it's so hypnotic, and it's so easy to get confused with the pointer as being the thing that's been pointed to. It's just because it is so subtle, and we're so not used to, you know, looking in a direction where there's nothing, if you like, but and so it just feels so alien, so that we grab onto the pointer. And I think that's what I'm hearing you say with the curriculum. But I think we all have, with these words are pointers, right? But we all have to constantly, and the stories, like you say, people stories, and that's what the Bible's full of, just story after story, because there's no way of speaking the truth. We can only just keep pointing. So whatever we put into the form is only ever going to be a pointer.
I love that. I'm going to write that down and steal it and credit you. I love that, because that's exactly the piece that, you know, I don't want the curriculum to be the pointer. I want it to be something, you know, something that somebody can create something from. And that is so true. That, thank you, Sheila, for that, because the truth lies in our own understanding and our own grounding of where we are in the moment. And I have seen that oneness so much since the pandemic. It just comes over me, and or I let the illusory world fall away probably, and suddenly I'm seeing the cell patterns on a butterfly, and I'm thinking, just a minute, you know, my eyesight's not that good. And then it's gone because I doubt it.
Yeah.
And I think, God, there must be so much beauty out there that I'm not tapping into just yet.
I've been reading a book, and it talks about there's actually in every moment, I think it's 400 billion bytes of information. 400 billion bytes of information. I think it's every second.
Wow.
And we filter out so much, and we see or listen to 2,000 out of 400 billion that's available to us. So that's that's what happens when, you know, you just said that beautiful thing about the butterfly. I saw it, and then we go back to the 2,000 bits, but something's opened up, and we're glimpsing something apart from the 2,000 bits we usually take notice of. I just think, I mean, all that's available to us all the time. It is amazing. It really is.
If you listen to that with your logical mind is already filtering out, saying, what's that got to do with that job? Mm-hmm. And one of the things that when I'm working with a big group of heads, is I say, you have to be really open to hearing hearing beyond what you usually hear. Put your intellect in your bag. I don't even mind if you doze off.
Put your intellect in your bag.
And then I'll say, on an iPhone, we'll judge in 3 seconds 50 times. I like that, don't like that. Oh, she said that. And we're so in this place of judging this, is it this or is it that?
Swiping right or swiping left. Well.
Yeah, that we take that habit into the classroom or into policy or into strategy. And so if I'm doing wellbeing, I do it whole school. I start with the leaders and the whole staff, and then I'll go out into class to support teachers, but it's their interpretation. And I haven't been in a single school where it's ever been the same, because every school is unique. And that's not onerous, that's just, you know, if you're teaching the principles, that's all you need, isn't it? The grounding in the principles, and whatever you're meant to do will turn up in the moment. It's having faith in that. I read a book, what was it called? Oh, something to the left. I wrote it down somewhere and I've forgotten. It was about, it was a Immaculée Bigayo, I think I might have mispronounced her surname, and it was about the genocide in Rwanda in 1994. And she hid in the shower room. Have you read it?
No, I've seen her interviewed on the TV.
Oh,
And talks about. I think Wayne Dyer had her on. Somebody
yes, it will have been. I haven't seen her being interviewed, but I just came across the book. It just, you know, things just fall in front of you. Oh, here it is. Left to Tell. And she stayed in a bathroom with about 9 or 10 other women, and they kept having to shift position because they were like sardines, and take it in turns to sit on the, you know, on the only chair, which was the loo. And for 3 months, and the oppressors came, and they were on the other side of the door. The priest had put a wardrobe in front of it, and they could hear, they were so close to being murdered. And the faith that she had, the trust in the universe through her religion, it's so powerful in the book. And I don't know who in the world is sharing that at the moment. I'm not hearing that spoken of. I don't know whether you two are, whether I've missed something. I'm hearing about all the dire things going on in America and the dire things going on in the UK and some of the oppression around the world, but I'm not hearing of anybody saying the message that we want to share in the world.
On mainstream media, for sure. I really watch mainstream media or listen to it. People that I speak to know it's all about fear. There's a lot. I mean, I think there's a lot going on behind the scenes, like, you know, YouTube, and I'm on a few people's lists, and I think there's the quiet drum of, you know, this is the way home. This is the way home, if you like. Just, I mean, Sue pointed me to a series that's called something like The Sixth Son, and it's about the indigenous.
Oh, I saw that.
Did you? So I mean, that, for me, that's like the quiet. It feels very quiet in the background, right? It feels, but that's what we talk about wisdom, isn't it? It's just the quiet voice, the quiet whisper that is always there for us, always there for us, leading us home. Whether we hear it, you know, whether our 2,000 bits of information filter that in or not is a different story. But you know what you're doing, Annie, is it's wonderful work in the schools. Is you're pointing in that direction, and I just think that's very hopeful. It's very, very hopeful.
I also, right from the first day, so we might be up to 18 years where I've sort of been exploring and enjoying this kind of life with the 3 principles. Sometimes think it's a thing, but I've always really strongly felt that it's about the grassroots. It's about conversations between one and another, or you and 300 heads. It's not about mainstream. It's not about getting on TV. It's not about, I think it would just be crushed, because I think the understanding, I think when you're talking about curriculum, It's the sort of the idea that if you just follow, the curriculum forms itself. It's almost like you can see, like on a walk in the Derbyshire, you look back and think, wow, look where we've come from. When we started out, it felt like it was so far. And you look behind, you look at the little farmhouse and it's tiny. Well, that's like your life curriculum, isn't it? It's like a walk. Or I think about my life and I think, well, I didn't follow a curriculum, but if I look back, I can see one formed.
Yeah.
Moment. And I think I think we're having these conversations. I think there are many across the world, not with necessarily the same titles or the languages, but obviously not the same languages. But I think it's going to come when it's arising like this. There's nothing can stop it.
I agree.
It's not a thing. It's just a growth, and it's an evolution. And I strongly feel that there'll be a tipping point. I mean, that's not my invention, you know, but that's my great hope. That's why I've always felt, I think, so optimistic and so hopeful. And yet, really, in a way, people say, why hasn't it gone out further? I think it has. I think it is.
And I think the call to be visible, I think I can see it more among women because of the disharmony between, I mean, we've all got masculine and feminine parts, that divinity within us. But the focus, as Sheila said, the pointer has been on that powerhouse of the masculine, the logic and the intellect, which we need. And we need to swing that more towards that nurturing, that life-giving, that sacredness that we feel nearly automatically. I know there are exceptions, but we feel that as women. And I'm watching my daughter recently could have gone for a really high promotion in the charity where she works, but decided not to because she wanted to change the way the charity was moving away from this masculine powerhouse. And she knew she could do that better in the position she was in. And that was like, whoa. And so when I'm working with young leaders, you know, they might be aspiring leaders, then it's about working with their truth in the moment, not somebody else's idea of where they should be going. But like you were saying about the journey, Sue, you know, you go on it moment to moment and you look back and you think, wow. And yes, it's what we said, there isn't going to be that linear progression of leadership. I mean, it'd be interesting to see the way industries are in the future. I don't know what that will be like.
It's it'll be fascinating to see. It really will. Interesting to see if there's enough. I was going to say if we're wise enough, but if there's enough calling in that direction to change, you know, move away from this money is, you know, is success. Because, you know, there's a lot more to success than money, that's for sure.
Oh yeah,
a lot more.
A lot of young adults that I know have moved away from the model that I thought I was free, but I look back and I say, oh no, you were not. You conformed at every stage until you got to sort of, well, I don't know when, but I look at them now, they're not conforming.
No.
So it's the idea I might have had. There's not, you know, lots of them, they don't have a job as such, but they have a lot of creative enterprises, and they're building things, and I think they're expressing just what you're talking about. And I think it's probably not irrepressible, but it's irrepressible in the sense, unless a force wants to try and stop that, it is live speaking through each individual. And you know, I've changed my views a lot, because I can remember in the beginning thinking, well, you know, they don't seem to be settling down. They don't seem to be, you know, what's going to happen when they get old? You know, they don't give a damn, because it will unfold.
When will they get a job? When will they start? Yeah, when are they going to start, you know, being normal?
And, you know, and the happiest ones I know have the least. They have the least in terms of material.
Their metrics are so different, aren't they? The way they measure life is so different.
Yeah.
It's great.
It is great.
It's great. I mean, it's great that you know, we live in a society that's much more accepting than it used to be. We're nowhere near where we need to be, in my opinion.
No, we're not.
But you know, if you look back just, I don't know, 30 years, it's It's very different, you know, there's so much more is accepted than used to be. So,
If you think about your grandparents, and we particularly, Sue and I, have a conversation, and she talks about both our grandparents came from Ireland, the particular set, the maternal set, and hers came with a knife, fork and spoon, and my grandma came with a table. So we tell the story of my grandma's table and Sue's knife, fork and spoon, and the way, you know, the courage of those women to and my grandma went to America for a while, and where did they get their courage from in those times? You know, in the times when women were not seen at all, where did they get the courage to uproot the family and emigrate to another country? Wow. What, you know, and how's that playing out through the generations, and where's the courage at the moment? Where is it? It's not in the grandmother side, and it isn't even in the courage that I, you know, to go to Manchester to university from the Lake District was like another planet at the time, you know. Soon got used to it. But where's the courage today? It's in a different place, like you were saying with the youngsters, both of you. It's in a, you know, it's almost like we'll take off the box and we'll have a look at those youngsters. Oh, I never thought of doing it that way. You know, it was still, in my day at school, it was separate boys, separate girls, separate entrances, boys always first, boys in the dining hall first. Even at uni, it was the, you know, the buildings were separate. The guys were down at UMIST and we were in another building far away, but Sunday morning you could see all the tiptoes down the staircase. I never dared do that because I was too Catholic through and through, and I thought, no, I'd be struck down dead if I ever did anything like that. I've made up for it since. I must have missed out in those days.
good for you. Well, look, ladies, I think given the time, it's, we could probably go on all morning, couldn't we? Keep agreeing and conversing about this, you know, very juicy topic. I think a lot of what we've been talking about is creativity, isn't it? And the genius.
Yeah.
Just what's, you know, what's available to us when we look, and we're willing, and we understand. It's even knowing where to look, isn't it? Because that's what you're helping people see in schools, and now you've got your new program. I think just pointing in the direction, you know, where to look. That's all we need to do. And
it doesn't and it's not outside, it's not external. I mean, that's the key thing that I say to anybody. I'll say it's not about my coaching, my program, my book. It's not about any of that. It's already within you. I'm just holding the light up for a while and until you can see it. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much,
ladies.
Annie, thank you. Well, we look forward to seeing you in October.
Yay!
Probably before, but definitely on the 23rd of October we'll be here online and flying the Viva Goes virtual flag.
Hey, look forward to it.
Hopefully channeling some tiny bits of wildness. I think you might be one of our collaborators. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time, and bye. Anybody who's out there watching us, great to have you along, and I hope you enjoyed the conversation.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.